It's time for Reason.
The government is nothing more in this situation than the big bad wolf in the cloak of a sheep, trying to look like the innocent little grandmother, trying to look like the innocent little Red Riding Hood when she knocks on the door the first time to intrude into the house to eat the grandmother. The government is the dangerous one in this situation, and we're allowing them to investigate Facebook for things that the private market can solve itself in the private sector.
This is the Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier.
Then I get on my knees and pray. We don't get fooled again. Don't get fooled again.
That's what I'm talking about. Welcome into the Voice of Reason, broadcasting live out of the heartland of America, right in the center of the nation, here on the Big Talker KQAM out of Wichita, Kansas. Simulcasting on KGPT TV, channel 2610, and broadcasting across the entire Mid-America Network. Welcome into it. It is a Thursday. The pre-Friday celebration has officially begun. It is great to have you along today. 316-721-8255, 316-721-TALK. We got a heck and a half of a show for you today. It's going to be a fun one. It's going to be a great one. We have a lot to get to, a lot to talk about. It is one day away from the great event that we're going to be broadcasting live out of tomorrow. Now, tomorrow, if you're watching on TV, we will not be broadcasting on TV tomorrow on KGPT TV, as we will not be in studio. We'll be on location, and so we will not be on TV tomorrow. It'll just be radio tomorrow as we broadcast live from Topeka, getting ready for the Second Amendment rally presented by the Kansas State Rifle Association and the National Rifle Association, getting ready for you to defend your Second Amendment. So if you're going to be able to get out there, head up to Topeka. It's going to be at 10 o'clock directly after the show. It's going to be a lot of fun. I get to host it and MC it, and we'll have more information on that in just a little bit. But welcome into it. 316-721-8255. Coming up on the show today, hour number 2, we're going to have Dave Trabert, Kansas Policy Institute, joining us in studio for the hour, as we love chatting with him. Just a few days ago, we got to... I got the privilege to go to a luncheon to see Senator Tom Coburn as he discussed many of the issues happening financially. Senator out of Oklahoma, as he talked about some of the Oklahoma issues, the Kansas issues, and the federal government issues, and what we can do to start weaning some of those problems out. So it was great to see him. We'll recap a little bit of that when Dave Trabert comes in studio in the second hour, along with the fact that we are still in the midst of the debate on what to do with our educational finance. Of course, with the tax rates, with the government spending, there's a lot to talk about there. So we'll talk about that in hour number 2. Hour number 3 is going to be interesting. We'll be full with guests as well today. As in right at the top of the 8 o'clock hour, Mimi Schwartz will be joining us with her latest memoir on the Holocaust Remembrance Day that happened on April 12th to remember everybody that happened. Did you read the story? And I think we talked about this a little bit a few days ago. The fact that 4 out of 10, almost 40% of young generation individuals, millennials, either do not know of or do not believe that the Holocaust actually happened. They're either not aware of it or they just don't believe that it actually happened. We need to remember history. If we don't remember history, then we're doomed to repeat it. Remember, that's what everybody always says. We're doomed to repeat history unless we actually learn from it before. And if individuals don't want to learn about history or actually are not aware of what's going on or just don't believe that nothing like that could possibly happen, I mean, we had deniers then too, didn't we? We had people that didn't want to jump into World War II. We had people that did not want to get involved in the conflict over there because, that's crazy. No one would be exterminating 6 million people like that. No one would be causing an issue like that. And it was happening. And when we saw it, then our eyes were open and we felt a little guilty for not jumping into the conflict a little bit earlier to try and stop some of that. But it happened, and there's nothing we could do by then. But we still have deniers. And now we have people that either deny it or just flat out don't know. What in the world are we teaching in our K-12 educational system? Usually that's an entire semester almost, by learning about World War II, learning about the conflict, learning about the war, learning about what happened, learning about the politics, learning about the culture, learning about the issues that happened back then. And nowadays, apparently, we're not teaching it. So while we're talking about, keep this in the back of your mind as we talk about educational finance, as we talk about K-12 education, as we talk about the public education system, what in the world are we teaching them when they walk out of K-12 school and they have no idea that 6 million plus Jewish individuals ended up dying at the hands of a dictator? at the hands of a socialist. Yes, oh yes, I said it. A National Socialist, like Adolf Hitler, who ran under the National Socialist Party of Germany, who became a fascist dictator, and who ended up taking the wealth of individuals, who ended up taking the control of everybody just because they had the opportunity to do so, because they had the idea to take over the world. And we don't believe that now. Now what do we do? Hey, Bernie Sanders is kind of a nice guy. Hey, Bernie Sanders is kind of cool. Hey, Bernie Sanders is pretty fantastic, isn't he? I mean, that whole socialist idea of universal health care, of raising the taxes on the rich, of consuming different businesses and corporations, of being able to have the government regulate everything, of having the really high taxes, of being able to get rid of your guns, oh man, that's a fantastic idea. It's never been tried before. It's never been successful before. We should do that. We should give it a try. What do you say? Those are the ones that probably have never thought of the idea that National Socialism ended up leading to the extermination of 6 million plus Jews during the Holocaust and during World War II. So we should probably learn from that. We should probably go back to our remedial education system and be able to actually, learn about history a little bit, because it's kind of important to understand what happened in the past so that way it does not happen today. They're the same yahoos that are trying to say that Donald Trump is a fascist because we believe in getting rid of government out of the private sector as opposed to increasing more government into the private sector. It boggles the mind, the absolute ignorance and ridiculousness that happens in society today, but yet it is there. So we'll talk about that. Mimi Schwartz, by the way, that was the whole preamble of Mimi Schwartz coming on the show at 8 o'clock. At 8:30 today, we will have Governor Jeff Collier on the show. He's talking about the trade war that we're having with China right now, as we did mention a few days ago, or I believe yesterday, with Craig Mead with the Mid-America Ag Network, the fact that China putting a 170% tariff onto our milo and sorghum, where 50% of the sorghum and milo produced in the country is made right here in the state of Kansas, and that means that we're going to be hurt devastatingly here in the state of Kansas. So we'll talk with Governor Jeff Collier about what they're doing to try and fight this trade deal, what they're doing to try and fight those tariffs and counter that, and where we go from here as a farmer, as a community, and as a state, to where we're really dependent on agricultural trade internationally. And if China doesn't want it, then we need to find a way to take it somewhere else. So lots to get to today. It's going to be a heck of a show. It's going to be a lot of fun, and I can't wait to jump into it. Let's go ahead and take a phone call, though, this morning, shall we? 316-721-8255. Good morning. What's your name?
Hi, Andy. This is Helen.
Good morning, Helen. How are you?
Doing just great.
Good.
And I want to thank you so much for representing us and our Constitution and Second Amendment.
Oh,
going
thank you.
up there and to Topeka.
No, thank you. That's going to be a lot of fun. I'm looking forward to that.
I just heard that they passed a bill in Arkansas where we have all of these school shootings and stuff like that, and it's most likely because we have taken God out of our schools and our public system, and they passed a bill.
Sure.
In Arkansas. It's posted in God We Trust with the American flag, and then the state flag. There's other states that have done this, and with the history of why we have in God We Trust.
Sure.
And have it posted in every school, every public taxpayer paid place. Only They didn't charge the taxpayers. They are raising funds to, I think it's about, and Hobby Lobby is helping, and they spend about $2 for a poster or something to post up in every classroom and in every school. In God We Trust.
Well, it's really good to hear, and I'm glad that they're doing that, because you're right. I mean, one of the reasons why and I'm glad you brought it up. There's a story that I read this morning that we were going to try and get to if we had a chance that talked about government versus religion, and the study said that the larger government grows, the less religion is actually in the culture in that society. And it's an argument that I've been making for years, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. But you're right, when we take religion out of the classroom, when we take religion out of the normal basis of every day to actually understand the reason that we have these God-given rights as an individual, that we don't look towards the government for the answers, but we look towards a higher power, and that we understand that the reason the founders limited our government to allow us to have a checks and balance system, and we don't abuse the government, or we don't look towards the government for all the answers, is because we understand that mankind does not have all the answers. We can go into all these different philosophical discussions, but while we're in a time of school shootings all the time, and people with mental illnesses, and people that are depressed, and people that are looking towards opioids or looking towards whatever, and during this society where we're looking for the answer, looking for something to fulfill our lives, then we've lost the fact of, hey, many people turn towards religion that has really changed their life around in that sense. And we need to start getting back to that, because when there was religion around individuals in the classroom or in the home or whatever, then we didn't see a heck of a lot of these issues that we're seeing today.
Right. Well, and if you take God out of schools, then Satan is going to gladly come in and fill that vacuum, that void.
Well, it's true. And I mean, in that spiritual war, if that's the way we want to put it, then, you're either going to see the light side or you're going to see the dark side, but that void is going to be filled one way or another. Helen, I appreciate it. And for those that may not be the most religious, then it's just the lessons that are learned by religion. It's not necessarily the God aspect of it, but it can be just the basic, the golden rule of treat each other as you'd like to be treated yourself. And, it's still taught by religion, but you don't necessarily have to look at the higher power for that. If you're not the religious type, you can look at it towards the side of common sense of let's treat each other with respect. But you learn that from the teachings of what religion has taught you. It's very easy.
You're listening to the Voice of Reason on the Mid-American Network.
Welcome back into the Voice of Reason, 24 minutes past the hour. Great to have you along today. It is a Thursday, the pre-Friday celebration, rolling right along. As we start off your day, better than a cup of coffee, a shot of espresso, even an energy drink. Yes, this show will wake you up the best way that we know how to do so. Welcome in 316-721-8255, 316-721-TALK. We have the Facebook Live feed up and rolling today as well. We will not have that tomorrow, as we are up in Topeka for the Second Amendment rally tomorrow morning. Stay tuned in for that. I will do, I think, a little Facebook Live feed just briefly teasing the show, getting ready, but we'll not have one for the entire show tomorrow, so be prepared for that. I do want to remind you that after that, by the way, I'll be heading up to Lenexa as well, and we'll be covering the entire Kansas State Rifle Association's annual meeting. As they have vendors, exhibitors, they'll have speakers, they'll have a great thing going on Friday. By Saturday, they'll have the morning shootout, the competition for the fundraiser. It's going to be a great thing. KSRAweb.org, KSRAweb.org. If you want to get information, it's like $35 a ticket to be able to go up there if you want to go up and check it out yourself as well. And we have some great sponsors allowing us to make this happen. Of course, the Kansas State Rifle Association, Augusta Flight Center, JD Aviation, AutoSmart, Jimmy's Egg, MJ's Truck Repair in Mound Ridge, Phil's Coins here in Wichita, and Rob's Gun Tech and Firearms. We appreciate all them partnering up with us and allowing us to be able to cover this this week, and it's going to be a blast. I get out of the studio a little bit. We get to go have some fun and promote the Second Amendment. 316-721-8255. There was a story of this is floating around and blew up yesterday on social media, and all the progressives are loving it, and I don't see the big deal. I don't know the big deal of why this is a big issue. I'm not quite sure, but they like to make a big deal out of little things. So nonetheless, Chris Kobach, Secretary of State, found in contempt of court by the federal judge because of how he presented his case. Oh, no. Oh, man. That is a terrible ordeal, right? I mean, that is right there. Yeah. Really? Huh. U.S. District Judge Julie Robinson on Wednesday ruled Kansas Secretary of State Chris Kobach was in contempt of court for failing to comply with her orders in a lawsuit over the state's voter registration law. Now, you heard during the court hearings that he apparently was presenting evidence that the opposition didn't have, that he wasn't supposedly allowed to be presenting, and the way he was making his case, because he represented himself. He did it himself, and apparently they didn't like his style, they didn't like what he was doing, they didn't like yada, yada, yada. So they're holding him in contempt of court. Oh, my. And the progressives on social media just blowing up everywhere saying, well, look at that. I saw one, you might want to read this to the Kobach supporters because, they can't read and how dumb these individuals are. And whether you agree or like Chris Kobach, whether you support him for the governor's race or not is irrelevant in this discussion. What is relevant is the actual case on voter registration, which is kind of an important issue in the state of Kansas. And the fact that they throw such a hissy fit over the fact that he's being held in contempt of court. Oh, my, because of how he presented his case. Now he's appealing, and it's going to go to somewhere else, and they're going to take a look at it. But if he is, so what? Is that really a big deal? Is that really that big of an issue? I'm not quite sure why this is a big deal, other than the fact that the progressives really show their true colors of the fact that they believe that individuals in black robes, meaning the courts and the judges and the judicial branch, that they are the end-all be-all, that they are really the dictators, that they are the true controllers of the nation, whether at the local level or at the federal level, that the individuals in black robes, the guys and gals in black robes, are the most important ones out of anybody, and if they make a ruling, then that's it. We need to follow suit. We need to get in line. We need to shut up, and we can't say anything otherwise. And it really shows that the progressives don't care about the checks and balance system. And I'm not necessarily talking about this case, but in general here, that they really don't care about the checks and balance process. They don't care about the three branches of government, that when a judge says something, when a court says something, you just do it. You just shut up. You don't say anything. You just do it. It falls in line with what's happening with the educational system. Oh, the Supreme Court told us we need more money for education. Just do it. End of story. Don't argue. Don't disagree. Just do it. They said it, and therefore it must be law because they are the ultimate masters. They are the ultimate say, and they are the ultimate ones that should tell us what to do with our lives. I don't care that he's held in contempt of court. Doesn't make any difference. He presented something. He's making his case. Obviously, it doesn't sound like they're very favorable to his case and that they're going to side with him. So you know what? We take it to the next level. That's what we do. And unfortunately, we have a system to where we have to the Supreme Court or the courts, the district courts, the state Supreme Court, the circuit courts, the U.S. Supreme Court, that these courts are the ones that feel that they have the ultimate say and that we should just abide by whatever they have to say. And it drives me nuts. In issues where they don't have justification or they don't have authority to make rulings, we shouldn't be listening to them in any way, shape, or form, like education. And judicial activists. Now, I don't know whether this judge is an activist or not. I don't know whether they have a political agenda or not in this one. But if they call him in contempt of court, fine. You know what? You pay the fee. You do the little punishment if that's the case. If he appeals and it doesn't work out, then you pay it and it's done. It's end of story. Game over. Oh, well. So what? Why is this a big issue? With the progressives, they love the fact that he's being held in contempt of court and that he's going to be punished for this. Not that big of a deal. It's all right. We'll be able to move forward from that, and no harm, no foul. It'll be just fine. We really need to find some courts that actually do understand the process of a voter registration system, actually being able to, allow us to verify who we are so that way we don't have random individuals just walking in voting, whether they're allowed to, whether they're not allowed to, whether they're legal or illegal, just because of the fact of, hey, it'd be bad if we actually try to make someone verify who they were beforehand. Heaven forbid we actually did something like that. Got some calls on the line. Stay here. We'll get to you as soon as we come back. Bottom of the hour news. This is The Voice of Reason.
For Reason.
If this is a victory for Democrats thinking they have the momentum again, then let them have it, because that's as far as they're going to go. In a state that was already won by Democrats, already predominantly blue, in a state where the Republican did not want to embrace current Republican trends. If you're not going to do that, then you're not going to win. End of story. It's very simple.
This is the Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier.
Welcome back into it. Happy Thursday morning to you. Lots to get to today, and it's great to have you along. 316-721-8255. 316-721-TALK. Story from the New York Post. Yeah, what the Americans can't get through the day without cursing. The average American utters their first curse word on an average at 10:54 a.m. according to the new data. Studying the everyday stress and frustration of 2,000 Americans aim to explore how much stress Americans take on and exactly how much they deal with. Having a bad day? You might use one in four Americans who can't get past 9 a.m. without cursing on most days. The new survey conducted by 9 Rounds Kickbox Fitness found financial worries might be the biggest cause of stress and frustration among Americans, which was 56%, followed by such time-honored stress. Let's see, health concerns, work. But there you go. Average person says a curse word before 9 a.m., so, yeah. Oh, yeah. 316. I actually don't curse a whole lot. When I get really, really angry, I let a couple things slip out, but being in radio, I always had the filter going on, so that way nothing does slip out. So I never really curse. I usually don't, or I try not to. I usually don't curse, except for when I'm really, really angry, which is very few and far between, but not very often. How about you? When do you start? When your first curse word of the morning? 316-721-8255. Had some calls lining up for us. Let's go right to the phone tier. Line number 1. Good morning. What's your name?
Happy Thursday.
Myron, what's going on, sir?
Oh, I'm good, and I'm really glad that tax season's over.
There you go. Tax season is done and over, and I'm assuming that most everybody had to pay the state of Kansas some money.
That was a surprise to many clients, yes.
Yeah, I'm sure that they weren't very happy about that.
But I wanted to, not that I should notice the hypocrisy of progressives, but it seems to me that a progressive president was found in contempt of court for perjury and had his law license lifted for a time.
Yeah, but that's okay though, because he's a wonderful, caring, loving individual who cared about everybody else. Chris Kobach is kind of one of those that just, doesn't care about anybody. He hates anybody with brown skin, and therefore it's totally justified that we should hold him in contempt of court because he tried to make his case himself rather than having someone represent him.
Yeah, I mean, it is very simple for a judge to find you in contempt, and if you don't do things the way the judge wants them, yes, you are in contempt of court, and the judge may or may not have been making reasonable requests, which is why you get an appeal.
Sure.
But it's not like he perjured himself or he falsified information. It's like, you didn't play the game according to my rules, I'm going to slap you on the hand.
Exactly. And that's all it is. It's a slap on the wrist for just saying you didn't follow the rules that I wanted you to follow. And whether it's because of a political agenda and it's an activist judge who didn't care for him and therefore they wanted to make an example, whether they knew that he was running for governor and they wanted to try and taint the reputation and name of Chris Kobach already, which I tell you, if that's the case, it's not going to help. I mean, I'm not endorsing or taking sides on anybody, and I don't think the governor's race is really relevant when it comes to this case because we're more focused right now on the actual voter registration case than we are on what he looks like running for governor. But if someone is trying to link the two, then it's really not going to help or hurt in any way, shape, or form. The people that don't like Chris Kobach are going to detest him even more, and the people that like Chris Kobach are going to support him even more. So if it comes down to the race and the support during the race, it's really not going to help or hurt one way or another. So if they are trying to make an example, then they're really wasting their time.
I would say that, yeah, trying to change Chris Kobach is a waste of time.
Well, right. I mean, he's going to do his thing, just as the judge wanted to do her thing. And you're right. I think it's nothing more than a political game. They wanted to make an example, and they may have gotten a little upset because he represented himself and he presented stuff that they didn't like because it wasn't known beforehand. And it's nothing more than a political game of them trying to make an example out of him. And that's really all it is.
but it's fun. It gives the newspaper something to write about.
Oh, exactly. Yeah. I mean, they absolutely love it. And the progressives blew up all over social media, and they got all happy and they got giddy and, oh, look at this. He doesn't know how to make his case and he's a terrible individual. And it just fueled the fire of them who already detested Chris Kobach in the first place. Myron, I appreciate the call, my friend. Great points. I mean, it's not going to do anything. I find it comical, though, with how widespread this tried to go, and the Topeka Capital Journal's all over it, and the Wichita Eagle's all over it, and then all these articles are being shared on social media, and all these derogatory remarks, and I find it absolutely hysterical. And you're right, if you want to look at it, then why did we support, and why did progressives and Democrats back and support a president who was held in contempt of court as well? But yet we don't talk about that. We don't look at the double standard here. We just look at whatever. I mean, have I ever brought up the contempt of court of a president who committed perjury? Did I ever bring something like that up? No, because I don't care. These are issues that people like to focus on for sensationalism, but yet they don't do anything for society. They don't do anything to help us actually promote ideas. It's just a way for people to try and demonize somebody else, which is completely pointless. But that's where we're at in politics today, isn't it? 316-721-8255. Let's go back to the phones. Line number 3. Good morning. What's your name?
Hi, this is Helen again.
Helen, what's going on?
Well, I didn't get a chance to ask you if you know of any representatives in the state of Kansas that would support this bill, like they just passed in Arkansas, to post our national motto "In God We Trust" in all public places like schools and stuff. Do you know of anybody? Would the governor or any of our senators, our Congress, would they support? Do you know of any that would support that?
Well, that's a good question. The governor probably would. I could probably see him doing something like that. If Governor Sam Brownback was in, I would know for sure that would happen. But I would say that the Governor Collier would probably support something like that. But in Congress, I don't see anything like that going through. I see the Truth Caucus and the conservatives that would support something like that if a bill came up. But just as we've seen with the educational funding or with tax rates or with anything else, that the Freedom or the Truth Caucus here in Kansas is unfortunately very small compared to the rest of the chambers. And out of, we would probably get maybe 30 or 40 votes in the House and maybe 10 votes in the Senate, but we wouldn't have enough to actually get anything passed. So we would have some support, but I don't think it would be enough to actually be able to get through, unfortunately.
Well, if it was supported by donations, do you think that we would have a representative would have enough courage to support this kind of a bill?
We could definitely try it, and I mean that's a movement that we can start, is having some type of movement, some type of ballot, some type of petition to be able to get going so we can draft the legislation for it and try and get it on there. But even then, I mean, unless we actually get it onto the ballot for the people to vote on, which would again be very difficult, and that might be a better chance if it gets on the ballot, just getting it on there in the first place. That would probably have a better chance to actually happen than it would for the legislature to actually pass it themselves, because I really don't think that we'd have enough support in our state legislature to be able to get it through the government.
Might help to separate the sheep from the goat.
Well, that's true. That's true. And I mean, we could definitely give it a try. Helen, I appreciate it. I don't know if we have enough support. It's definitely, I'm not saying that it's not worth trying, though. I mean, we can definitely try it. That's the power of you and I actually to make it happen. And I'm not discouraging that in any way, shape, or form. I am saying, though, that if we just tried to present a bill in the legislature right now, then I fear that it would just go towards about the same result of what we've seen with anything trying to lower sales tax rates, with trying to lower tax rates altogether, and with trying to stop the Supreme Court from, abusing its power in the Supreme Court to try and bully the state legislature. But it's definitely worth a shot. 316-721-8255. Appreciate that. Tomorrow, I've been talking about going up to Topeka and having the rally in the Second Amendment rally in the Kansas State Rifle Association's annual meeting. Tomorrow is also 420. And I don't know how many of you remember that tomorrow was 420. And for those of you that don't know, you're like, what's 420? 420 is the day where the individuals that like to consume the cannabis and the marijuana, that's the day that they really like to come out. And I tell you what, in Colorado, it is a really big deal. You're going to see people in the middle of the streets. You're going to see people walking in the parks. You're going to see people just out in public doing their normal thing and just rallying together, smoking massive amounts of marijuana. And There's going to be probably protests to try and legalize it. There's going to be rallies to try and legalize it. And the Lawrence Police have come out with a tweet with the Lawrence Police Department's Twitter account. And I found it absolutely hysterical. Hey, potheads, planning to toke up on 420, stay off the road. Stock up on Cheetos and Mountain Dew before you spark. Saturation patrols define drugged drivers to occur regardless whether a drug is legal or illegal. It's a serious crime to drive while impairing by any drug. So there you go. I don't know if they got in trouble for that tweet. I find it hysterical. But hey, potheads, toke up on 420 and don't drink or don't drive afterwards. It's sad that we actually have to mention that, but if you do consume on 420 and you're actually going to plan on indulging on that, then do it safely and in your home and not in public and not on the roads. And it's sad we have to mention that, just like drunk driving, where you don't consume an adult beverage and then try and go and drive. That's not the smart thing to do in any way, shape, or form, and should be punished severely. But there you go. Well done, Lawrence Police Department. I thought that was a great tweet to remind the potheads, quote unquote, not my words, theirs, to stay off the roads when you toke up on 420. 316-721-8255. Let's go to the phone, shall we? Good morning. What's your name?
Scott.
Scott, what's happening, sir?
Well, they need to, here in Sedgwick County in the police state, they need to start recalling these politicians here locally or either unelect some of them come election time, because it's just a travesty what they've done by allowing a killer cop out on the street. Nobody knows who he is, and the reporters are too scared to report who he is.
Scott, they're not scared to report it. They're not scared to report it. It's an investigation that's ongoing where, number one, they can't release it. And if the journalists are trying to get the name, then they haven't been able to get it yet. But they're not scared to release it. I just don't know that anybody knows who it is other than the people that were involved in it.
It never stopped anybody from leaking on President Trump. It seemed like they're able to leak on the president.
You're right. You're right. And that's why I don't think that they're scared to release it. They just don't know who it is. They don't have that information. And the ones that do have that information are the ones probably involved with the investigation that are not allowed to do it. So, but the media themselves that's trying to do this. I mean, come on, if they were able to break it and they were able to find the name of that information, just think about the ratings that they would get by being able to release that before anybody else. They would skyrocket because everybody wants to know, but they don't. I don't think they're scared to. They just don't know.
Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier on the Mid-America Network.
Wrapping up hour number 1, 6 minutes at the top of the hour, 316-721-8255. You know, Scott brings up a good point, not because of the part that he's trying to get to when it comes to the whole cop thing, but electing local officials. I mean, come on, we have the best transparency and the best accountability by electing or unelecting local officials when it comes, if it's the city council, the county commission, state legislators. I mean, come on, we have a heck of a lot bigger and larger say in some of those issues than we do when it comes to the federal government. So you are right on that one. If we don't like the way things are going, then you have the opportunity to vote somebody in with the next election. Time for News with Rick. Let's go to that. What's happening?
Hey, good morning, Andy. Good morning, everyone. The state of Kansas taking over 15 private nursing homes after the owner and operator defaulted on payments to vendors and failed to meet payroll. Kansas Department for Aging and Disability Services Secretary Tim Keck will oversee operations of the Skyline Healthcare homes. Court documents show the facilities have nearly 850 residents and 950 employees. Keck said Florida-based Mission Health has assumed the day-to-day oversight of the homes. Mission already operates 14 skilled nursing facilities in the Sunflower State. He says the next step is to find a new owner. The verdict in yesterday at federal court in Wichita. All 3 men found guilty of plotting to bomb a mosque and apartment complex housing Somali immigrants in Garden City. Patrick Stein, Gavin Wright, and Curtis Allen were convicted of 1 count each of conspiracy to use a weapon of mass destruction and 1 count of conspiracy against civil rights. Wright was also convicted of a charge of lying to the FBI. All three could face up to life in prison. Sentencing in that case set for the 27th of June. And Kansas Governor Jeff Collier has ordered state flags to be flown at half-staff to honor the life of former First Lady Barbara Bush. In accordance with White House proclamations, flags should be flown at half-staff until sundown on Saturday. That's the news.
You know what's really pathetic? What's really sad is, we're in the mourning for Barbara Bush and everything that she went, because she was a great lady, great individual. There was according to the Independent Journal Review, a tweet from a professor at Fresno State University. Barbara Bush was a generous and smart and amazing racist who, along with her husband, raised a war criminal. That was the tweet in response to Barbara Bush passing by a professor at a university. Talk about representation. What do you think?
Why did you have to rain on my tribute to Barbara Bush?
That was just the follow-up. That was something that I had to get to here. I do have to ask you this, though, and I talked about this a little bit earlier, but tomorrow I'm really excited. We're going up, and I get to cover and host and MC the Second Amendment rally in Topeka with the Kansas State Rifle Association and the NRA. But tomorrow is 420.
Yes.
Yes. We get to celebrate, right?
Fire up, dudes.
Fire up. I think this is the best tweet of the day. The Lawrence Police Department, hey, potheads planning to toke up on 420, stay off the road, stock up on Cheetos and Mountain Dew before you spark. Saturation patrols to find drugged drivers to occur.
Yep.
That's probably the best tweet that I've seen, even better than a Donald Trump tweet.
I love how they said spark up.
Spark up! Yeah, stock up on Cheetos and Mountain Dew before you spark up. There you go. A police department tweeting that out, I think, is pretty fantastic.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Well, hey, have safe travels to the Northeast Quadrant.
That'll be fantastic.
We'll look forward to your reports from the Capitol tomorrow.
I've never been to the Capitol yet, so I am really excited to get up there and see Topeka and be on the Capitol ground, especially with a microphone. That's a dangerous thing.
I'm sure you'll shake it up.
That's a dangerous thing. Rick with the news.
And that's the news.
There it is. Give a microphone to a radio guy on the state capitol talking about politics and politicians. It's kind of a dangerous thing, but yet it's going to be a lot of fun and really exciting, and I appreciate the opportunity from the Kansas State Rifle Association and the NRA presenting that one, along with, just to remind you, for everybody out in the western part of the state and beyond, if you do want to try and get to that, not only is the rally happening at 10 o'clock tomorrow in Topeka, but also in Lenexa, Kansas, at the Hyatt Place in Lenexa. They are going to be doing the Kansas State Rifle Association's annual meeting all day tomorrow and Saturday morning. When it comes to the shootout as well, that's going to be at the police station and at Mill Valley there. But the meeting on Friday all day, if you want to go there, $35 ticket's going to be a lot of fun. I'll be up there. If you're not going to be there, I'll be doing updates throughout the day tomorrow and Saturday via both on Facebook, 1480 KQAM on Facebook and on the radio here, so you can hear that, because it's going to be a lot of fun, and we appreciate the opportunity to do so. Wrapping up hour number one. When we come back, Dave Trabert, Kansas Policy Institute, going to hang out with us for an hour. Going to be a lot of fun, as there's a lot of things to chat and talk about happening here in the state of Kansas. Everybody on the western part of the state, though, enjoy. We'll be back with you tomorrow, because this is your show. It's time to speak up, speak out, speak loud, speak proud, speak the truth, and always speak some reason. This is The Voice Reason. Stay here.
It's time for Reason.
The government is nothing more in this situation than the big bad wolf in the cloak of a sheep, trying to look like the innocent little grandmother, trying to look like the innocent little Red Riding Hood when she knocks on the door the first time to intrude into the house to eat the grandmother. The government is the dangerous one in this situation, and we're allowing them to investigate Facebook for things that the private market can solve itself in the private sector.
This is The Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier.
Then I get on my knees and pray. We don't get fooled again. Don't get fooled again.
Oh, yeah, that's what I'm talking about. Welcome into The Voice of Reason, hour number 2 of The Voice Reason, broadcasting live out of the heart of the nation here in Wichita, Kansas, on the Big Talker, 1480 on the AM side, 102.5 on the FM side, KQAM simulcasting, KGPT TV, channel 2610. Welcome aboard. It's great to have you on a pre-Friday celebration. We have way too much fun on this show. We try and wake you up better than a cup of coffee, a shot of espresso, even an energy drink. No matter where you may get it, we try and get you pumped up and excited. Let's carpe diem. Let's have a great day and utilize. Look, the progressives, they're lazy and they like to complain and be the victims. We don't do that. We actually take advantage of the day. So while they fall behind because they're too busy complaining, we actually are productive in the day and actually do something productive and actually get ahead in life. And there's a big difference right there. We just summed up politics in 30 seconds. 316-721-8255, 316-721-TALK. We are live on Facebook Live as well. You can see the video, and I'm really excited. We get him in usually about once a month, as he is in town, but with the Kansas Policy Institute and the Sentinel, by the way, but with the Kansas Policy Institute, Mr. Dave Trabert with us. Dave, how are you, my friend?
Good morning, Andy. Good to be here.
Hey, it's great to get you back in. You guys had one fun luncheon a couple of days ago.
We did. We had former Oklahoma Senator Tom Coburn in. Tom wrote the foreword for our book and gave a great talk to a big crowd at the Mark Arts Center. He talked about the importance of getting spending under control at the state, local, and national level.
Something that we desperately need, but yet not a whole lot of people like to talk about.
No, they don't, because as one Republican legislator in Kansas said when asked, why don't you guys just reduce some waste in government and balance the budget? He said, well, we'd all lose our jobs if we did that.
Yet they don't like to do that. And it seems like even the Republicans, many of them in the federal level in Congress that talk about trying to reform different spending programs and try and get the budget under control, they try and chip around and nibble at the edges, but yet we don't actually address what necessarily needs to be addressed. And that goes for not only the federal level, but at the statewide level as well, as we've talked about many times before when it comes to educational funding and tax rates and so on and so forth, that we don't address the major issue, the major piece of the pie, and we just nibble around the edges of it.
You know, and I think there's a huge gap there between doing what the public wants and doing what the high-powered lobbyists want, because the hesitancy to even cut waste. We're not talking about cutting services. We're talking about cutting the price of the service. That's where you have a lot of legislators run in fear of, like, the education lobby or the government union lobby.
Sure.
The public, on the other hand, wants people to address challenges. Ironic. I mean, it's like the guy who said, I'm afraid I'll lose my job if I do this. I think that's maybe the best way to keep your job if you stand up and say, look, we have a problem. I'm going to fix it. I want to fix it this way.
Sure.
I think people would respond. I mean, we've seen people respond to that. I mean, some people think that's one of the main reasons Donald Trump got elected president, because, like it or not how he says it, and sometimes he says it inartfully, but they're talking about problems. Let's be honest about what we're facing, and let's try to do something about it, because it's pretty clear that doing the same thing over and over and over again hasn't resolved our problems. That's partly why we're where we are.
Exactly. There are many politicians that try and talk tough, but when it comes down to it, they actually don't address what they said they were going to do. And you're right. I think the sensationalism of politics today is the person that's going to come up and say, you know what, I will put myself out there and put my neck on the line, and I will do what's right. And if even if it hurts you, if you understand the long-term success of this, then you'll support me and reelect me. If not, then I guess I'm going to go home. And by putting yourself out there, that's kind of the new sensational politics, because Donald Trump just doesn't care, and a lot of people are starting to take that mentality in politics, and I think it's going to benefit us.
Yeah, you know, and it's got to be liberating too. I can't imagine being an elected official trying to play dodgeball all the time with these questions. You know, how do you try to make everybody happy? It's impossible. You tie yourself in knots philosophically. Just have a principle. Stick to a principle. Too many people in elected office, they have more preferences than they have principles.
Exactly. You guys have done more so than I've seen anybody else do when it comes to trying to break down and make people understand what's going on with the Kansas budget, with the tax reform that we did in 2012 with Governor Brownback, with the spending that actually didn't go down, with now trying to do the tax compensation for that. And you guys came out with the book, What Was Really the Matter with the Kansas Tax Plan, The Undoing of a Good Idea. We're going to give away a copy of that in just a little bit, so stay tuned in for that. And as you mentioned with Tom Coburn writing the foreword on this, but we've given some copies away before, but give us again a little explanation of a little blurb of what's happened in Kansas, because now we're seeing the sensationalism again. at the national level from progressives and Democrats of how cutting taxes doesn't work. Just look at what happened in Kansas. Kansas is the perfect example of free market, low tax capitalism failing flat on its face.
That's what they say. But at the same time, states like North Carolina, Indiana, and Tennessee cut taxes, and they did it successfully. So the issue isn't that you can't. It's that it was really what was different about the Kansas experience. And the number one, there were a lot of things.
Sure.
The number one thing was they failed math class. You can't cut taxes and increase spending.
Doesn't work.
It doesn't work. That was just one of the big issues they had. But that's why we decided we needed to tell this story, because we were being bombarded with questions from legislators and policymakers all across the country.
Sure.
What's really going on? And it's, okay, so the crowd, the tax and spend crowd doesn't like it. Here's why they had to demonize the Kansas experience. The secret to having low taxes is controlling your spending. The states that tax income now spend 50% more per resident than the states without an income tax. They all provide the same services. There's education, highways, social services, and so forth. It's just the states that provide those services at better prices can pass on the savings and lower taxes.
Right.
And the other thing about the Kansas experience was that there was what they called the ratchet. There was this understanding that controlling spending is what does it. They said, fine. So they set targets, revenue targets. Every year revenues come in above the target. That money isn't going to be spent. It's going to be used to buy down next year's income tax rates.
Mm-hmm.
It made the tax and spend crowd crazy.
They didn't like that.
If this worked, this catches on, all the people who profit from excess government spending are going to lose. The American public wins, but the taxpayer-funded lobbyists lose. So they had to demonize it.
That's funny. That's funny. Oh, yeah. How dare that we actually pay forward and pay in advance some of our bills. It's kind of like how some people like to pay their utility bill 6 months out, a year out, so that way you don't have to worry about it, and then you can use that money to save or put it in savings accounts. Yeah, that's exactly what if you were able to actually pay off some of the state's debts for the next year for some of their spending, how dare that, because we should spend all of it, and then we can raise taxes when we actually increase spending again. And it's funny how that works.
It is.
Yeah. Senator Coburn mentioned this, and I had forgotten all about this as well, but the Texas economy was, what do you say, the sixth largest economy in the world.
Yeah.
To even compared to many nations, just because of how well they do, and they don't even have a lot of the taxes that we have.
No, they don't, and it's not because they have, and they do have oil, but that's not why. Texas could have all the oil in the country and still have a high tax burden if they spent more. The difference is they just don't. They provide their services at better prices. Here's the difference. For example, Texas spends this is in the Green Book you mentioned.
Sure.
$2,691 per resident. That's about $1,100 per resident less than Kansas. It's a huge difference.
A little bit.
It's a huge difference, and it's not because they're big. There's New Hampshire spending even less than, about the same as Texas, $2,706 per resident. New Hampshire is a tiny state. It doesn't have an income tax or a sales tax.
Mm-hmm.
This can be done, and no one goes to New Hampshire for the winters.
Exactly. No one goes up there all the time.
Or South Dakota. It's about putting citizens first. We have to provide good quality services. Let's provide them at the best possible price so citizens benefit from lower taxes.
I tell you what, you guys came out with this, and this actually came out just 2 days ago, the morning of the luncheon with Senator Coburn, but this 2018 Green Book, and it's all the numbers that we read on the radio here that we try and regurgitate, that we try and fill, because I'm a numbers kind of guy myself, and I know sometimes that's kind of a drag and a bore when it comes to radio with people listening to percentage rates and numbers and stats and yada yada, but this little Green Book, you guys have compiled just about all the numbers and property tax rates and comparisons and spending, and all compiled it into one nice little pretty book.
It is. We call it the Green Book. It really explores the relationship between the size of government and economic growth. So, for example, it has the state-by-state comparisons on job growth. The states that tax income had job growth of 21%. historically, or like 1998 to 2016.
Sure.
States without an income tax grew by 40%. You want to look at wage growth, wage and salary disbursements. The no-tax states grew by 120%, the rest of the country by 89%. It just goes on and on and on. The states that spend less tax less, and they grow more.
Yeah, it's funny how that works, but yet we don't hear that in the mainstream media.
No,
we don't hear that.
Because that's a lot of that is about, well, some of it is they might not have the information, but it's cheering. Honestly, it's cheering on the tax and spend crowd.
Well, it is, but the information's there. We just have to get back to what journalism actually looked like and actually say, oh, here, let's actually do the investigative journalism and let's look at a state and what really happened, like what's really wrong with the Kansas tax plan or what went wrong compared to what's actually happening, instead of saying, hey, let's look at that Kansas experiment over there. Those guys failed. Look at that. Low tax states actually fail and they don't work. Yeah. Let's take a break here to the 2018 Green Book. We'll have a copy to give away for that in a little bit as well. I think we're going to do it. You guys are going to get a heck of a package today. Somebody at least is going to get that with the book. What really was the matter with the Kansas tax plan, along with the 2018 Green Book, along with another gift that we'll give away in just a little bit as well. So lots to give away, lots to talk about. Dave Trabert, Kansas Policy Institute. If you have a question, you can give us a call, 316-721-8255. When we come back, there was a comparison that you guys did with the KPI when it comes to another state and the spending for their education and how it relates to what we could be doing here and kind of how that flows with the nice little study that we saw about that we need to increase spending, close to $2 billion. We'll talk about that and more when we come back. 20 minutes past the hour. This is The Voice of Reason. Stay here.
The Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier on the Big Talker KQAM.
Yeah, welcome back in. This is The Voice of Reason right here on the Big Talker KQAM, 23 minutes past the hour. Looking through the nice little green book here, we are looking at the county by county in the state of Kansas. Private sector jobs as a percentage of the population compared to the public sector jobs in the state of Kansas, county by county. Looking through, let's see here. Some of these, like Pawnee County, 56% of the workforce in public service and government employment. Dave Trabert, Kansas Policy Institute here. Is there a correlation? We were talking a little bit about this off the air. Is there a correlation between counties with a higher percentage of government employees and a predominantly blue or more progressive area that likes taxes because they like the fact that that goes towards their paycheck as a government employee?
That may be in some cases. I think it most often, Andy, it's a representation of a county that's been losing population. Because these counties where we have very high levels of government employees are out in western Kansas for the most part. And basically what's happened is the population has been shrinking, but government didn't shrink with it. So what you end up with is fewer and fewer businesses and private sector people to pay for government. So what you're seeing here is really the picture of a tax burden increase.
Sure. What we should do, and if we want to talk about the size of government compared to a community, which goes into the regulatory side, which goes into the tax side, which goes into the spending side, maybe we put some laws in that say that in a certain community that the government employment should only be a percentage of the population. So as the population increases or decreases, then the government should stay about that same size to be correlated with it.
Or you could take the approach of, and this is what Kansas really needs. We've had some property tax reform. What you're seeing here, when you have this level of government versus the private sector, you're probably seeing very high property tax increases. We need property tax reform in Kansas so that there's been some things done, but the legislature took government's side in making sure there were lots and lots of loopholes.
Sure. So
they could still do it. We need to have some serious property tax reform. We have some of the highest effective property tax rates in the nation. As a matter of fact, there's a page in here where we get information from the Lincoln Land Institute, and they rate urban and rural areas Guess which state has the highest effective property tax rate for commercial property in rural areas?
Gee, let me guess.
Kansas. Iola, Kansas.
Wow.
The highest effective property tax rate for commercial property in the nation.
Unbelievable. And we talk about tax rates altogether. Not only the property tax rate's extremely high, we have the 7th highest sales tax in the nation. And if I remember correctly, the top 6 actually are straight sales tax states without any income tax.
I'm not sure about that, but yeah, Kansas, if you look at, according to the Tax Foundation, it's if you put state and local combined, we're the 8th highest in the nation.
Don't you feel good about that?
You know, we're a high tax state and getting higher.
Sure.
You know, Kansas was going in the right direction for a while, but they couldn't control spending. There wasn't political will to get rid of waste in government. And so we've been going in the opposite direction. And now, with the legislature approving another $500 million in school funding, it's going to keep going that way. I know some people say, well, I think we can do this without a tax increase. What they're not saying is, well, the only way that happens is if we keep draining the highway fund and we don't have ending reserves. And, oh, by the way, we're going to have some tax increases. We're just not going to call them tax increases.
Yeah.
So Kansas is moving toward, with this new education spending bill, Kansas is moving towards higher and higher and higher taxes.
What's going to be the new PC term for tax increase? Because you're right. I do find that funny. We're not allowed to call it tax increase anymore because that sounds really bad because the government's going to take your money. So what can be the new PC term that we can call a tax increase?
Oh, well, here's one of the latest ones. They're looking at, this hasn't passed yet, but when they come back, they're going to be looking at an online sales tax bill.
Okay.
Where they wanted to, because Kansans already pay $174 million a year in sales tax for online purchases, according to the Department of Revenue. But there are companies that, because you're not allowed to tax if the retailer doesn't have a physical presence in Kansas, you're not allowed to charge sales tax. So, but the purchaser, if you or I make that purchase, we're supposed to report it and pay the use tax, and that's where the $174 million comes from. But so what they're trying to do now is increase it and say, so they're calling that a fairness issue. It's not fair that some retailers in Kansas have to charge sales tax and others, across the state lines don't.
Of course.
So it's a fairness issue. So here's how you deal with that fairness issue. If you're going to raise, and this would raise another $90-some million a year, and it's coming out of Kansans' pockets no matter how you look at it, well, then use that revenue to, say, maybe buy down the food sales tax rate. Okay? So we have new revenue coming in. Use it to, because we don't need higher taxes, but the truth is government wants this money so they can say, well, no, that's not a tax increase. That's not a tax increase. It's like the federal government. Now you can't, we're getting lower federal taxes, but part of that is people with high deductions aren't allowed to take them all. That's
an idea.
That's another one that they're going to say, well, that's not really a tax increase, Andy.
Yeah,
government's going to get a lot more money. You guys got to pay a lot, but we don't really consider that a tax increase.
It's not a tax increase. For all the legislators listening, I have an idea for you. Here's what you do when you come back. You present the child fairness law, decreasing the sales tax in the state, because that way you can properly take care of children by buying them food and lunches for their school. So it is now the Child Fairness Act, and that's how you need to title it. So that way, if they vote against it, then they don't care about the children. Got to take a bottom of the hour break. Dave Trabert, Kansas Policy Institute. We got the calls lighting up. We'll get to you as soon as we come back. We'll start off the bottom of the hour with you, the phone caller. This is The Voice of Reason. Stay here.
When a headline just isn't enough.
Is that all you got?
It's time to wake up the right way.
All right.
This is The Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier on the Big Talker, 1480 AM and 1025 FM, KQAM.
Welcome back into it. 36 minutes past the hour. It's great to have you today on a pre-Friday celebration. That's the way we roll today. And I think so. Any legislators listening, I think we need to pass it. We need to have the Fair Child Act. and lower sales tax under it because, well, it is about the children. And therefore, if you vote against it, then you hate children. And I think that we really need to make this. What do you think, Dave?
That's the way the game's played.
That's
it's
the way
all
the
about
game's
the
played.
kids, so you got to vote for this.
That's true, exactly. So there it is, the Fair Child Act and lowering sales tax, so that way you can afford the groceries to feed the kid, because it really is all about the kid. So if you vote against it, then you hate children because you care more for the government than you would the children. 316-721. See, I could play this game too. This is fun. Yeah, there we go.
Yep.
Let's go to the phones. We got some calls lighting up here. Let's go to caller number 1. Good morning. What's your name?
Hi, this is Helen.
Helen, what's going on?
Well, I would like to ask, why is our Congress not following the U.S. Constitution? Article 1, Section 8, it says the Congress shall have power to lay and collect taxes, duties, imposts, and excises to pay the debts. Instead, they're collecting taxes to spend more money and get us deeper into debt.
And not pay off the debts. That's a good question. I mean, I think that's the question all of us would like to know on why they actually do that. What do you think, Dave?
Well, I mean, I guess technically they are raising taxes, and they do make debt and interest payments every year. The problem is they increase the debt every year.
They increase it to the point that we can't pay all of them off the way we need to.
Yeah, it may be that the Founding Fathers were just being, in that case, a little too logical. I mean, because they were frugal. They were very careful with citizens' money. But this group now, I mean, and it's bipartisan.
Oh, sure.
The people who go there and say, I'm for frugality and efficient government, well, except in this case.
Oh, sure.
When it gets me elected.
When it's my special interest, then I guess we can actually just loosen the girdle a little bit. Why not?
Yeah.
Let's go back to the phones. 316-721-8255, line number 2. Good morning. What's your name?
Good morning, Andy. It's Nick.
Nick, what's going on, my friend?
Yes, sir. Hey, thanks for having this discussion. Good morning, Dave. I appreciate everything you do for the state of Kansas and the Republican Party. Knowing our conservative Republican goals, I guess my question, and whether fair or not, would be if you had the tiger by the tail, where would be your top 2 places to start cutting the budget to match up with the tax cuts? And I'll let you talk about that.
That's a great question, Nick. First, let me point out that we don't do anything for the Republican or any other party. We're a completely independent organization. If we had the tiger by the tail, what we would do is people are the biggest expenditure in most cases for most governments. And when we know that we have 32% more government state employees than the national average on a per capita basis, that's one of the things we have to look at. We have to start looking. Kansas has a performance-based budget system, so you have to start looking at where are we doing things that we don't need to be doing, or where could we do things with automation. And that doesn't mean that people get laid off. In this case, it's kind of a good thing. Every year there's a pretty high turnover rate of people either leaving or retiring, and you simply don't replace a lot of those employees. And that's across the board. You can't take anything off the table. And this is one of the things that legislators do. They say, well, we can't cut education. We can't do this. Well, yes, you can. And again, we're not talking about the service. We're talking about the cost of the service. So, whether it's how many assistant, deputy, vice provost, superintendents do we need, or how many do we, and it's at the higher education, it's at K-12, it's in every agency. How can we provide this same or better quality service at a better price? That's the focus you take, and nothing can be sacrosanct.
A great example of that is a story you guys actually just came out with just a day or two ago with Kansas Policy Institute. Students focused at Florida when it comes to Florida finances and Florida spending on education compared to the state of Kansas. Now, this goes right into the study that just came out saying that we need close to $2 billion more in additional funding. What did Florida do, and what maybe are some lessons that we could learn from them?
Well, Andy, that's a great question. Florida, under Governor Jeb Bush, starting around, I think he went into office in 1999, they started a student-focused approach. Florida was way behind the national average, and they basically said, look, we are so far behind, we don't have anything to lose. let's take an all of the above approach. And so they started implementing a lot of student-focused things, like they developed robust school choice options, public charter schools, all kinds of scholarship options for low-income kids, for disabled kids. They said, we've got to be honest. We have to be honest with citizens about how our schools are performing. So instead of fuzzy labels like approaching standards or attaboy, they went to labels that everybody understands, A, B, C, D, F. We know what that means.
Sure.
They put letter grades on every building so they could draw attention to it. They said, let's stop promoting kids just because they're a year older. They put a ban on social promotion. Now, Kansas, on the other hand, has a money focus. Kansas is strictly focused on money. The one little school choice program we have, the education community tries to get rid of every year. They'd rather see these poor low-income kids sent back to the worst-performing schools in Kansas. We tried to have a social promotion ban. Governor Brownback proposed an initiative for third graders, basically saying, hey, if they can't read, let's not send them to the fourth grade. Schools fought that like crazy. No. They'll feel bad. The unions and the schools came out and said, no. We've got to promote them no matter what.
Sure.
A through F grading, we won't even talk about that. And so here's what's happened. And Florida has gone from being way behind the national average to now 7 of the 8 measurements. So there's looking at 2 grades, 2 subjects, and 2 different low-income cohorts and everyone else.
Sure.
8 different measurements. Florida is ahead of the national average in 7 of the 8. And
wow.
Head-to-head competition with Kansas, 6 wins for Florida, 1 tie, 1 loss to Kansas. Now, what else has Florida done at the same time? Because, money's everything.
Oh, sure.
Florida spends $1,200 per student less than Kansas.
Less than Kansas right now.
Less than Kansas. They have better outcomes, lower spending, because they've taken a student-focused approach.
Right.
In Kansas, the only thing the education lobby and the legislators who listen to them are interested in is money. It's money, money, money.
That's all it is.
And it's just they continue to try to disprove Einstein's theory of insanity. We do the same thing over and over again, and we're not getting anywhere.
Which really comes down to, when it comes to this research study that we've seen, that instead of actually just dumping more money in, that if we used it efficiently, if we focused on things other than just the dollar amount, then we might see the quality of the education system go up without having to spend another cent in money.
Here's one of the big reasons that Florida can have better outcomes by spending less. Florida has 5 times the number of students as Kansas, but Kansas has 4 times as many school districts.
Sure.
67 school districts for 2.7 million students versus 286 school districts for 490,000 students. Florida has taken the student-focused approach both in terms of their policies as well as their organizational structure of how they put districts together.
Mm-hmm. It's fascinating to see actually how the quality is compared to the dollar amount spent in some of these states.
It can be done. It simply comes down to, what is our focus? Is our focus going to be on institutions and unions, or is it going to be on students and taxpayers?
Well, right now, we're not seeing the proper response to that. 316-721-8255, 316-721-DOC. Dave Trabert, Kansas Policy Institute, in studio with us. This portion of The Voice of Reason, by the way, brought to you by Riverside Cafe, as I'm really excited about this. They're partnering up with us, and I you know me, I love my food. I love giving away goodies, and we're doing this now every Thursday as we get to give away to you, the listener, a nice complimentary burger and fries. Hat tip to Riverside Cafe. 2 locations here in Wichita, 1 in Derby, 824 North Baltimore Avenue. Their newer location just opened up there. Every Thursday, we get you, my friends, Riverside Cafe. We get you a nice complimentary burger and fries. They have, by the way, a 3-pound burger that I am so excited to try. Dave, one of these days, we're going to have to try and do the 3-pound burger challenge. What do you think? You like that? I kind of like that. So what we're going to do is we're going to do a questionnaire. We're going to do a trivia question. You get to call in and you get to guess. Now, I was reading a few days ago, and this goes right into with the wealth, with taxes, with the evil rich individuals who we want to tax, the top 20 wealthy presidents that this nation has seen. And Dave, I mean, obviously, number one we can give away is Donald Trump. It's $3.7 billion with a net value. Can you list, do you think, you know, who the other 20 or the other 19 out of the top 20 may be?
No clue.
No clue. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up lines to you, and if you can name one, let's start it off easy, one other president who's in the top 20 for the most wealthy presidents that we've had in the nation, I'll give you not only the complimentary burger and fries hat tip to Riverside Cafe, who sponsors this segment of the show, but I will also give you the deluxe package today. What was really the matter with the Kansas tax plan? The undoing of a good idea. The book from the Kansas Policy Institute, along with, on top of that, the 2018 Green Book with all these stats and numbers and goodies that you need to know when you're debating someone or just for you to understand. So the three package here, if you can call in right now, 316-721-8255, 316-721-TALK, and you can name one other president that's in the top 20 for the most wealthy presidents the United States have seen. Donald Trump, obviously, number one at $3.7 billion. I'll give you a hint of one other one. No one can use this one, by the way. Number two is John F. Kennedy at $1 billion. I guess the Kennedys make sense. They got a lot of money. They get a lot. But some of them actually a lot older than that, too, or at least older when it comes to who are presidents. So let's go ahead. Let's go to caller number one right now and get your guess on the most wealthy presidents we've seen. Caller number one, what's your name?
Victoria.
Victoria, how are you today?
I'm very good.
Hey,
very good.
Very good. All right, can you name another president that's in the top 20 for the most wealthy presidents we've seen?
I'm thinking Clinton.
Oh, Bill Clinton. Actually, you are absolutely right. He is number 9 on the list at $75 million as the net value. Victoria, stay on the line. We'll get your information. You, my friend, won complimentary burger and fries from Riverside Cafe. 2 locations here in Wichita, 1 location in Derby. You also got the copy of the book, What Was Really the Matter with the Kansas Tax Plan. You also got a copy of the 2018 Green Book, the 3-way deluxe package today. Victoria, congratulations. Stay on the line. We'll get your information there. We'll take one more break. Dave Trabert in studio with us for one more segment. This is The Voice of Reason. Stay here.
This is The Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier.
Welcome back in. Congratulations to Victoria, our very first Riverside Cafe giveaway, free burger and fries. We'll do that every Thursday. Stay tuned in for our pre-Friday celebration, brought to you by Riverside Cafe here in Wichita. 2 locations in Wichita, 1 location in Derby. We appreciate those guys and love them very much. So I am dying to try that 3-pound burger. I am so excited. Come on, Dave. What do you think? We can rock the 3-pound burger. That'll do it for a week. That's good enough right there. I love it. 316-721-8255. Yes, Bill Clinton was one of those. We'll do another one next week. Don't cheat. Don't you be looking at some of those. We may have to do another question. I don't know. Wrapping up, we got a few minutes left here with Dave Trabert, Kansas Policy Institute. Coming up in hour number 3, Mimi Schwartz will be on at 8 o'clock for the Holocaust Remembrance. That was April 12th. And at the bottom of the next hour, Governor Jeff Collier will be joining, talking about the trade war that we're seeing with China and the tariffs on Milo and sorghum. But as we wrap up this one, Dave, going into the last bit of the session, we're going to go back. We're going to adjust the quote-unquote $80 million error in the educational funding, which really says we just didn't throw enough money in initially right on top of this year, because that's really, really important, right?
Well, yeah, there was a mistake made in how the bill and they were doing things pretty rapidly, trying to get out of town, and the way that language was written with an amendment actually took $80 million off the table.
Oh darn!
And so yeah, so they'll come back and they'll call it a technical adjustment. Hopefully, they'll come back and maybe say, let's actually do something student focused. And something as simple as, let's make sure that whatever money you spend has to go for raising proficiency first, meeting adequacy first, not whatever you want, because that's when, there is no accountability. There has never been an accountability. Now, there are some people who will say, oh, we got accountability in this $500 million increase. No, what they mean by that's code for we're not raising taxes. That means, we've got a target. We'd like to go to this graduation rate. And that's nice to have a goal, but a goal without a consequence is not accountability.
Sure.
If you don't hit that graduation rate, who rates the refund check?
Right.
No one. There's no accountability. There is zero accountability because Kansas legislators have never summoned the courage to say, schools, we're going to give you this money, but you local school board members, you have to use it to improve outcomes. And if you don't, there is a consequence.
Right.
There's a consequence to a student who doesn't achieve their goals, but we have no courage to hold our school officials accountable to use the money in a way that's going to improve outcomes. That's how you help students. If you're not willing to do that, then you're helping institutions.
Right.
You're not helping kids.
Well, and we've lost the accountability across the board, as you mentioned. I mean, we don't even punish the student anymore for not reaching their goals. Oh, you know what? You didn't pass your test. Well, just go get them next time. Or, oh, we're going to hold you back a year. Nah, not allowed to hold them back a year because that could be detrimental. That could be psychologically really bad for the student if they get held back a year.
Yeah, and this notion of let's shoot for a higher graduation rate, that's a phony target to begin with. You know who has a higher graduation rate than Kansas? My home state of West Virginia. 90% graduation rate versus Kansas 86% graduation rate. Right. Now, you tell me, where would you rather have your kids go? To a state where 29% of the kids who take the ACT are considered college ready, or where 19% are considered college ready? I mean, neither one of them are actually good, okay,
sure,
29%,
sure.
But West Virginia has a higher graduation rate, but only 19% of their kids are college ready. Graduation rate means nothing. And yet, what do we focus on as our institutional goal? Let's raise the graduation rate. Well, maybe because we can control that. It's meaningless.
It's meaningless. We got about 20 seconds left. Dave Trabert, Kansas Policy Institute. It's always a pleasure, my friend. I love all the information you guys do. Thank you for what you guys do. If people want information, want to be able to follow you, see some of the information, how can they get a hold of you guys?
KansasPolicy.org.
KansasPolicy.org. Dave, it's always a pleasure, my friend.
Thanks, Andy.
We love it. Always a lot of fun. Let's wrap it up. Hour number 2. We got lots more coming up in hour number 3. You're not going to want to miss it. As we talk about the education, talking about education, we may be sinking a lot of money into it, but what are they actually learning? I saw the study. 25% of young generation millennials don't even believe or are aware of the Holocaust. And that's going into a week of Holocaust remembrance this week. We'll talk about that when we come back. Stay here.
It's time for Reason.
The government is nothing more in this situation than the big bad wolf in the cloak of a sheep, trying to look like the innocent little grandmother, trying to look like the innocent little Red Riding Hood when she knocks on the door the first time to intrude into the house to eat the grandmother. The government is the dangerous one in this situation, and we're allowing them to investigate Facebook for things that the private market can solve itself in the private sector.
This is the Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier.
Then I'll get on my knees and pray. We don't get fooled again. Don't get fooled again.
That's what I'm talking about. Welcome into the Voice of Reason, broadcasting live out of the heart of the nation here in Wichita, Kansas, on the Big Talker, 1480 on the AM side, 102.5 on the FM side, KQAM simulcasting on KGPT TV, channel 2610. Welcome aboard. It's great to have you along on a Thursday. The pre-Friday celebration rolls right along, 8 minutes past the hour. 316-721-8255, 316-721-TALK. Thanks again to Dave Trabert with the Kansas Policy Institute coming on the show in the last hour talking about the latest book. If you want a copy, by the way, I had a few people on the Facebook Live feed. Andy, where can I get a copy of the Green Book? Go to kansaspolicy.org, kansaspolicy.org, and you can find both of their books, the Green Book and their other book, What Was Really the Matter with the Kansas Tax Plan, and you can get a copy of those by a donation to the KPI in that sense. So appreciate him coming on. We'll get him back on in about another month or so. At the bottom of the hour, we have Governor Jeff Collier on the show talking about the tax and the fight with the trade with China and how they're putting that 170% tariff on Milo and sorghum, and the fact that Kansas produces 50% of the sorghum and Milo in the country means that our farmers, we're going to get hit pretty hard on that. So we'll talk about that coming up in just a little bit. But I want to stop for a minute, and we don't do enough of this on the show. But we need to the remembrances, the memorials, and we need to remember these things. And what's really sad is that the last hour we literally just talked about the education system and the fact that we're not focusing on graduation rates, we're not focusing on the quality of the educational system, we're not focusing on what's really needed in society for our young generations to learn and grow. And we can talk about the financial side of that. We can talk about the quality of that, the Common Core aspect of it. But the fact of the matter is that we're losing our understanding of history. No longer do we teach in our classrooms the fact that the Founding Fathers crafted something that's unique to anything else in the entire world because of what we believed in with free marketism, capitalism, the lack of a dictatorship, and the fact that you have the ability to defend yourself and believe in whatever you want to without persecution. That's unique compared to the rest of the world. We're losing because all we're taught now is that the Founding Fathers were a bunch of white landowning property owners, racist, bigots, slave owners, yada, 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 and therefore whatever they said, we shouldn't believe in. Then we're losing. They always say that if we don't understand and learn from history, we're doomed to repeat it. And it's a scary aspect when you see a study that came out on CBSNews.com last Thursday, a week from today, which was Holocaust Awareness Day, where 4 in 10 millennials don't understand or don't know that 6 million Jews were killed in the Holocaust. According to the study published last week on Israel's Holocaust Remembrance Day, that 22% of millennials, my generation, have not heard of or are not sure if they've heard of the Holocaust. And not only is that pathetic and it breaks my heart, but it's angering and it's scary. The same generation that's really pushing for like the whole Bernie Sanders socialist movement revolution, if you don't realize socialism's what led to that. Socialism's what led to dictatorships, to utopianism, and to devastating things. We need to learn this. And we need to understand it. And the best way that we can actually learn and understand history is with our next guest that I'm really honored and really excited to have on the show. She's a storyteller. She's an immigrant of a German-Jewish family, a wife of 40 years, writer, professor. She's a breast cancer survivor, traveler. She's even a tennis player. And her latest book, When History is Personal. We have Mimi Schwartz on the line with us. Mimi, how are you today? Thanks so much for coming on the show.
Well, thank you for having me.
I really appreciate it. I'm really honored to have you on here. And I know we're a week late from Holocaust Memorial Day or Remembrance Day, but it is so important at any time to remember what history has done, what we've gone through as a society or as numerous societies, and what we can learn and take away from that. And people who have experienced it firsthand, as your family has done, I really appreciate you, the fact that you try and tell people and teach people about it so that we don't lose that history, because I feel like we're losing it.
Right. Well, I think it's very important that we all think of our own lives in a larger context. And I think that's what I was trying to do in the book, that we live in a point in time. We're concerned with what we're having for breakfast. We're concerned with all kinds of things, but we need to think about how does our small story fit into the larger story. And I think that's what I was trying to do with the book, whether it was, and I too, growing up American, I was the first one born in my family here, and America was considered the melting pot, and I just jumped in with both feet, and I really didn't want to think about the past. And
sure.
So this book was the second one in which I actually realized that the past is always with us, and we better understand it and see how we fit into it in order to move forward in a better way than if we don't know anything.
Exactly. We'll talk about your experience. I know that you've gone over there and seen the memorials, that you've gone to Auschwitz to visit, but talk about the trials and tribulations that your family went through and your experiences as a child.
Well, my father went to a Hitler rally in 1931, and this was even before Hitler came to power. And he realized that he was quite a dangerous man, and a very dangerous man for the Jews, because he was very anti-Semitic. And he decided he was going to leave Germany. It took him a couple of years. He convinced most of our family to leave. And so they came here in 1937, and I was born here a couple of years later. And as I said, at that point, no one was talking about what happened, and even after the war, no one was talking until Anne Frank's book, The Diary of Anne Frank, which came out in 1953, was the first story really that hit the public as to what went on in the Holocaust. And there was no Schindler's List, there was no Holocaust museums, and so the awareness started then, and my awareness, or my facing my own past, started about 30 or 40 years later when I heard a story of the Torah of my father's village being rescued not by the Jews but by the Christians. And I got interested in that story. And so my other book before this one was called Good Neighbors, Bad Times, and that was about that, going back into the homes of both of Jewish and Christian neighbors and having them tell me how their life was like before and during and after the war. And so that was quite interesting. And this book is my life in America, so it's living here and what the legacies of the past were and how does that shape who I am. And it's a question that I think is true for all of us. So, for example, I live on a street that is full of history, and one of the essays in my new book is about all the different stories of history that are either I've heard or overheard. Einstein was here at one point. There was the first women's college of New Jersey was here. There was a factory here during the Revolutionary War. And so it's a whole story about how the history that came before me is right here.
Wow.
And I hope that other people who read my book will think, well, what about my street? What happened here before I was here?
Sure.
And how does that connect with who I am? And we all live in a place that has a history that came before us. And I feel we should all pay attention to that. And hopefully that is a way to think about the past and connect so that we won't forget the important things as we move forward.
Well, there's always so much history, like you mentioned, no matter where you go or wherever you may be. And it's sad that a lot of it gets lost because people don't think about writing it down or documenting it. And I was not aware that we didn't have any type of discussion, memorial, anything of the Holocaust or what happened over there until the 50s, which I was curious of how they actually responded to that, and the society in Germany as a whole on what they did after the war, of like, oh, we're sorry we never did it and it didn't happen again and we promise we'll never do it again. And I just don't know how a society comes back from after doing something like that. So I'm sure it did take some time for some healing, but we need to remember this, and we hopefully from now on we don't wait so long after a historical moment to actually remember these things.
And to keep it alive. I think that's really the challenge, to keep telling the stories, and maybe that's the job of the storytellers. I mean, how much history do you think was lost during that 20 years of trying to forget about it, not documenting or saving everything? I mean, from different articles or different items or different memorabilia or something. How much of that do you think it was already lost during that 20 years before we actually started saying, hey, we should pay attention to this? Well, I think that it was being documented. I think what happened was that people who had gone through the trauma just didn't want to talk about it. I think that was true of a lot of World War II veterans, too. They came home. They didn't want to talk about what happened. And I think the individual stories, which are the stories that we respond to, really weren't discussed until Anne Frank was the first of the individual stories. But certainly I think there were the Nuremberg trials, so that the government was documenting it, and Germany, I think, just only started in the 70s. Sure. But they've done quite well in trying to come to terms with what happened. They've certainly done better than some of the other countries. But, whether they'll continue to remember the past as we move forward, we don't know. Sure. Talk about, with your latest book, When History is Personal, and your experience as a child here in America and after coming over from Germany. Talk about your experience. You mentioned the melting pot, which isn't brought up a whole lot in today's times when we talk about refugees coming into the country or illegal immigrants flooding into the country and people holding on to their culture and not wanting to assimilate into society today. Can you notice a difference in your communities, even on your street, maybe, with the difference between
what you remember as a child with the melting pot mentality as opposed to today of everybody kind of at each other's throats to compare to the differences that they may have?
Well, I think there was more of a sense of, not for every group, but my family was interested in assimilating. My father never spoke German when he came here. He didn't want anyone in the family. So I grew up not speaking German.
Okay.
So I think nowadays it's probably still true for some groups, and for other groups it's they try to hold on more tightly to their culture. And of course, the public media makes it possible because there are stations in Polish, there are stations in Japanese, there are stations in Hispanic stations, so that you can stay in touch in a way that wasn't true in the 40s or in the 30s or in the 20s. You had to learn English, and you had to try to assimilate.
Sure.
So I think that was different.
I do have to ask you. I'm a millennial myself. I'm a younger generation individual, but growing up through, really, I'd have to say one of the greatest times in history, which I think there's so much history from World War II to all the progress that America made through a lot of the different rallies and the women's rights movement and the black rights movement and everything that's happened throughout the different decades. I have to ask, what was the best decade you thought that you got to live through, that you got to experience? Was it the 50s or the 60s, 70s? I mean, what was some of the coolest times that you got to experience?
Well, that's a hard and good question. I'll tell you, my late husband used to say that you have to play the hand that's dealt as best you can.
Sure.
And I thought that was like our family motto. And so whatever the decade, we were always looking to see how good we could make it for ourselves and how to live through it. So even some of the very difficult times, having breast cancer, he had a heart attack, he's since died. I think that saying that has made it we always look for the good parts, and having children, having grandchildren, having a career, accomplishing something that you like every day that you feel good about. I think I've always thought of it in those terms of.
It's a good way to look at it.
So it's all good.
It's
all good, even though there's lots of bad.
That is very true. No, you're right. Absolutely. There's all good. And I always said that I was born in the wrong time, because if I had the opportunity, it would have been either the late 1800s or right around the 1940s and 50s, because I thought it was just a fascinating time. And I really wish I could have experienced that sort of thing. So,
yeah, well, I do think that for some reason that I think the 50s, and especially the time after the war in the 50s, were more optimistic. America was in a more optimistic frame of mind. And
sure.
I think now, although there's lots of things that are, and when you think about it, I think they say that there's less fighting, there's less wars, there's less poverty. I think the world is more not optimistic and feels that things are not quite going in the direction they want. And for young people, I think there was a time, I think, when we were looking for jobs, that there were a lot of jobs and a lot of choices, and people felt they were going to do better than their parents did.
Sure.
And I'm not sure people feel that way now. So
that is very true. We got just a couple minutes left. We're talking with Mimi Schwartz. MimiSchwartz.net is her website. MimiSchwartz.net. You can check out her book, her latest book, When History is Personal. But last question I want to ask you, and again, thank you so much for coming on. The question that I want to ask is for all the naysayers maybe who deny what happened in Germany or denied the Holocaust, or maybe just don't like to learn about it, or maybe it's too traumatizing to where they don't even want to. They turn their head and just look the other way. The message to them, especially these young generation individuals who say they're not even aware of it, what's your message to them for us to move forward so we don't make the same mistakes again as a society?
Read and talk to people who remember, and get out of the frame of mind. I think of it as that we're all in a GPS where we know exactly where we are at this point, but we have no idea where we are in relation to anything else.
Sure.
And I think that we need to get out of that, and the best way to do that is to read and talk and watch movies of the past and keep thinking about how do you fit in.
And even with opposing views. I mean, the safe space mentality of your idea is offensive, I don't think that helps us, does it?
Well, I think talking to people and reading means not just reading the things that you already agree with.
Sure.
One of the things I hope in my book, using what I call OPV, opposing point of view, is that I'm always trying to include another side so that people who don't agree with me will keep reading.
Sure.
I think that's one of the important things that good memoir can do, is to try to keep people reading, because it puts a face on politics, and we need to have a face in order to be able to see beyond just an idea of something to the people who are connected to those ideas, the lives that they've lived.
Absolutely. Mimi Schwartz, MimiSchwartz.net is the website. Check it out. When History is Personal is the latest book. Mimi, thank you so much for coming on the show. It's been a great honor. God bless you. I'm so glad that you're able to get this history out, and hopefully people are able to read it and actually remember what's happened, especially for some of these younger individuals that may not care to learn it. Maybe this is the wake-up call.
Well, thanks so much, and thanks for having me.
I really appreciate it. Mimi Schwartz right there. Let's take a break. 25 minutes past the hour. We got some calls on the line. We'll get to you as soon as we come back. This is The Voice of Reason. Stay here.
The Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier on the Big Talker, KQAM.
Bottom of the hour news coming up. Went a little long in that last segment. Thanks again, to Mimi Schwartz joining the show. Great information. When you learn about history that way, doesn't it just make it so personal? And the story of her book, when you make history personal. That's the point. And maybe we can learn something from that when you get the first-hand experience or even second-hand experience, learning about it from the person that was there. You learn so much, don't you? It's crazy. Bottom of the hour news coming up. It's open lines to you when we come back. Stay tuned.
Keeping Republicans and Democrats accountable. This is The Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier.
Welcome back into the program. Wrapping up the show today, 36 minutes past the hour. Appreciate you hanging out with us today on a Thursday. The pre-Friday celebration rolls right along. Governor Jeff Collier, the office called just a few minutes ago at the bottom of the hour, said they were not able to make it. We'll get him back on the show again at a later time. So hope everything's all right there, and we will get Governor Collier on the show very, very soon. We have not talked to him in a while, both on either issues happening in the state or even for the campaign. So we will get Governor Collier on the line with us here soon. But until now, because of that, it's open lines to you for the last half hour of the program. 316-721-8255, 316-721-TALK. And we do have some lines lighting up, so let's go right to them that have been waiting over the break. Line number 1. Good morning. What's your name?
Good morning. This is Paul.
Paul, what's going on, sir?
Oh, lots of things, Andy.
Hey.
There's a lot going on in the world.
That there is every day.
Yeah. I was just curious what you thought about this analogy. I had mentioned previously on your program that I'm a product of the public school system, graduating high school in Pittsburgh, Kansas in 1973. And however, unlike my father, I had never been in the military. My father retired from the Navy.
Okay.
So does that only make me a socialist and not a communist? I mean,
not at all. No, not at all. No, look, the discussion we have on public education today, when you graduated in 1973, the education system's way different. than what we have as an educational system today. Because
exactly how?
Well, first off, there was no Common Core education back then, so there wasn't a government standard as there is today. There was still kind of a government standard, but not like there is today, to where they've changed history books, they've changed the standards, they've changed the quality. They have all these different SAT, ACT, all these different government tests to try and put you in this box to decide how smart you actually are. The educational system is so different from what you went through then.
I can remember taking an ACT about my, was it senior year or junior year?
Yeah, junior and senior year is usually when we do those. But the point is, it's way different than what we have today. I mean, you went through, and I'm sure that your school, when you went through the public schooling, because I went through public education myself as well. I mean,
well, then you're a socialist too, right?
No, of course not. No, the point that we try and make is that nowadays,
but the structure's based on socialism.
The structure
of the public school.
Oh, sure, yeah. The structure is based on,
and the military. Since you have to sign away most of your civil liberties, that would be comparable to communism.
I know people have tried to make that comparison before. Being that it's the military, you can't necessarily say that the military's the structure of it is really a communist style. No, I mean, you have the chain of command and you have your orders, but that's the way the military operates. If you want to look at,
but you're not free. You're not a free person.
Well, you're not free, but you're technically not free if you put on a badge or a uniform and you wear a name tag when you go to work every day too, because your right to freedom of speech and your right to a lot of things you're allowed to do on your own personal time is different than when you actually go to work and you're representing the company, is it not?
That's why I thanked the prosecutor so much on the Garden City bomb plot case.
Sure.
Day before yesterday, as the jury went to deliberation, I said, "Sir, thank you so much for your service to our country. You are the people. I'm the big bad wolf. You're the big bad wolf. Each one of us are in control of how we educate our children. If everybody was fully active as a citizen, studying issues and voting."
Sure.
Yeah, we're the big bad wolf. We the people are. So there is no excuse. We can't really blame it on anyone but ourselves. Whatever we did.
Well, you have a point there. You definitely have a point there, because it really does come down, as we try and promote here on the show, is personal responsibility and accountability for us. So you're right. If the education system's bad, it is our duty to say, you know what, you're not getting taught everything that you really need to be taught, and we're going to do the additional studying with you at home as the parents, because when it comes down to it, it's our choice to put our kids in a certain school or to have them educated a certain way that we want to. The problem is, and I don't like to make excuses, but one of the problems is, and this has been the agenda of progressives for a long time, is that they have now created...
I'm what you call a progressive, yes. That's what you call it. I call it an apolitical constitutionalist.
For progressive? I think that there's a difference between a constitutionalist and a progressive. So, I mean, if you consider yourself a progressive, that's fine. I would say that there's a difference, though, between progressivism and constitutionalism, but that's all right either way. But the progressives for a long time, under Barack Obama, under a lot of the establishment on both sides of the aisle, by the way, Republican and Democrat, have created such an environment to where it's very difficult for many families to educate their children at home, because they've created such a financial burden that most families have two parents that are working or working multiple jobs, and they're never home and spending. It wasn't
that way when I grew up, although I guess my parents did work most of the time.
Right, but there was a vast difference, I'm sure, when you were a kid in the late 60s, 70s, and coming home and having the family time to sit down at dinner and talk about the day and talk about how things were, as opposed to today when, the family may be working way later, they're working two different part-time jobs, they're running around all over the place, or, and then the kids has their phone and they're not communicating, and there's that breakdown of the family to where the parents can't sit there at the dinner table and say, what'd you learn at school today, and let's talk about it, and let's have you regurgitate what you learned, and then let's help you out with some of the issues that you have. There's a big difference between how the family was then and today, which is a part of the breakdown of the educational system.
Well, let's fix it then.
Yeah, let's fix it. I'm right there with you, my friend. I love that. Paul, I appreciate it. You're right. Let's fix that. Let's get that back on track. Let's get the economy going. Let's get taxes low. Let's get people back to work with decent wages. Let's get the businesses to where they're flourishing, to where they can actually give raises that they need to. Let's drop down the inflation. Let's pay off our debts. Let's not have to worry about part-time jobs. And let's make a sustainable economy. Then we can spend family time and reestablish the family. I'm totally with you there. Let's make that happen. The problem is progressives, a lot of progressives, liberal progressives, do not like that. They do not want that. They want them working for the system. They want people on government programs. They want people working numerous jobs. They want to spend all the money at the elite level because they'd rather spend the money in the government than they actually want to in the private sector. But let's get that back. Let's bring back the good old days. I mean, we just talked to Mimi Schwartz at the first part of the hour, and what did she mention was that the people, the mentality of individuals in the 50s is that people were happier. The economy was doing well. People were booming. You could find jobs very easily. You weren't in crazy amounts of debt with $100,000 of student loan debt to go to college to get your education, for you to come out and struggle to find a job. Things were happy. The family was home. Now, I mean, you could talk about the other points of it with women's rights and minority rights and that sort of thing, which I'm not disregarding that wasn't a problem then, but the family was together. You come home, you sit down, you had the dinner together, you talked with the kids, you helped them with their homework, and you had time to do that. You had the barbecue on the weekends with the family and with the neighbors and with the friends, and you had that. Nowadays, oh, sorry, I got to work on Saturday. Oh, sorry, I got to work on Sunday. Oh, sorry, I got to work here. I got to do this. I got to run it here, do that. We're not very social anymore, not even with our own family. And I think that has a large part to do with our failure in the educational system. Appreciate the call, Paul, very much. Want to take some more phone calls here. Let's go to line number 2. Good morning. What's your name?
Hey, my name's Ryan.
Ryan, how are you, my friend?
Pretty good.
Good.
I just wanted to say, you're touching on good points here, but I think the problem is much more systemic than we really want to take credit, than we really want to say.
Okay.
I mean, when you look at it, public schools are essentially, full disclosure here, I'm a Christian, so public schools are, essentially an indoctrination into intersectionality. And also in order to fund that, you don't really own property anymore. You lease it from the state. Essentially, now you can pay off your house, and if you don't pay those taxes, then hey, guess what?
Sure.
The government seizes your property.
Absolutely.
And so instead of actually educating people, we educate them into the progressive religion, so to speak, and then from then on we hand over our children to people whose God is the state.
Mm-hmm. You bring up a really good point, and I saw a piece this morning actually, and I hadn't got a chance to talk about it. We may have to bring it up some point, but there was an article, "Government versus Religion," and the studies showed that the larger government grew, the less religion there was in the society of that country. And
when you think about it, when you think about it, it's like $11,000 to $13,000 per student that we spend,
mm-hmm.
right? And so, essentially those who don't want their kids indoctrinated into the religion of the state are essentially double taxed because they, educate their children either at home or in private schools, So they essentially pay for education twice.
Exactly. I mean, the families that don't have kids or that are retired and don't have kids in the system, or you're right, that took them to public school, they're still paying on their property tax every single month, every single year towards that educational system in that district that they live in. And then they turn around during the bonds every year and say, hey, we need to add a new bond into the system. We need to raise your taxes, but don't worry, it's only going to be the price of a pizza every month on your home per every $100,000. So it's not that much. You can afford it, and it's for the children. Even though you may not be paying into it or you may not be utilizing that service, you really need to pay into it because you got to pay your fair share.
Yeah, exactly.
You're right, Ryan. I appreciate it very much. I mean, you bring up absolutely good points. I mean, we right now, and it falls in line with that government versus religion, is that where many in the progressives see the government as their own religion. They really do. I mean, come on. When you look at the difference between religion and government, God-given rights like the right to be able to protect yourself, the right to believe what you want to believe, the right to hold yourself to a certain standard, the right to live the way that you want to live without any type of persecution. That's God-given rights. And I don't want to get too religious here, but that's the God-given rights as opposed to the government rights of, oh, there's an issue, let's go to the government for answers. Let's look at the government for the answers. Let's take away the guns because the government will save us. Let's take away the rights of freedom of speech because the government will protect it. Not the people will protect it. There's a difference when you look at the Bill of Rights, and it says that freedom of speech shall not be infringed, the right to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed, the right for you to believe what you want to believe shall not be infringed, and the government cannot oppress that, or else it's our duty to overthrow that government, as opposed to saying, oh, the government, please create a protected class for me, because then I can create a lawsuit and I can go after that person because I feel violated and a victim, and the government needs to protect me. There's a big difference on the wording there, isn't there? But we look at it as the government religion, to where we look towards the government for the answers instead of our inner self and for the higher power, and realize that man is flawed and that man does not have all the answers, and therefore we limit the power of man so that way, or woman, whatever, so that way we don't put all the power into them and we look towards them. But we do. We look towards the government for the answer when it comes to education. Hey, look, it's a government educational system, and we look towards you to educate my child, not me. And we need to get back to that. We need to start changing our thought process and our basic mentality of how we approach these issues. Let's go back to the phones here, shall we? Line number 3. Good morning. What's your name?
Hi, this is Helen again.
Helen, what's going on?
Well, I'm glad you had that young lady on about the Holocaust. Scripturally, in St. Matthew 24:32 through 35, the Holocaust was a catalyst for bringing in the final end-time fig tree generation, which Jesus says shall not pass away until all things written in the Bible shall be fulfilled. So we're living in that end-time fig tree generation.
Well, and it's if we live towards that, and the generation that grew up with that, that's getting right towards the end of that, because I mean they're getting pretty old, aren't they? So that generation's coming up pretty quickly if that's the way we choose to interpret that. I appreciate the phone call. Let's sneak in one more phone call before the break. 316-728-8255. Caller number 2. Good morning. What's your name?
Good morning, Andy. This is Ron.
Ron, what's happening, sir?
Great show with Mr. Trabert. He always has something really good to pass on, and
he is a plethora of information, isn't he?
Yes, he is. The big thing I keep harping on to, and I call in about it, is administrative realignment. We've got the administration in public education that has grown 7 times larger than the average in the last 20 years of the student population. It has grown about 4 times the teachers' population average.
Sure.
And it's totally out of control, and it really is. But I've watched Mr. Trabert up there in front of those dim bulbs when he gives testimony up there at Topeka.
They don't like that very much.
Yeah, they don't like that very much, because this goes to fiefdoms.
Sure.
They're building fiefdoms up there. They've been not there, but down in the school systems.
Here's what we need to do, and we need to, because I'm with you and I'm with Dave, and I support it and I love it, and it's so many numbers and so many facts and statistics, is that a lot of people, and especially politicians, where they're supposed to look at the numbers and keep emotion out of it, but they become the bleeding heart emotional, and they glaze over when they hear a bunch of numbers, and all they want to hear is, let's save the children. And once they hear the emotional argument as opposed to the raw, hard facts, they kind of glaze over and they go towards more the emotional side. The same way with the voter, for the most part, is that you have to find a way to make a voting issue emotional for people to want to turn out and actually support it one way or another, to vote yay or nay on the issue, by making it emotional and personal to those voters. And that's the toughest challenge, is that when we see the raw, hard data, it's a very difficult thing sometimes to try and advocate for. We don't need any more money in our schools. We actually could do with less money in the schools, and we don't necessarily need as many people working in the schools because we don't need it. And to an emotional individual, they hear that and they say, oh my gosh, you really want to strip away the schools and not take care of the children. And that's not right, but that's the emotional response that many individuals get right off the bat, unless they truly want to understand it.
Well, like I said, it's got many factions that's wrong with it, but that's, to me, is the big gorilla in the room, is the growth of administration.
Oh, sure. I mean, what was it? 72 districts last year ended up increasing, while they decreased in student enrollment, ended up increasing in the administration side with the number of people working in the administration. That shows that we're not focused on the children. If you want to have the emotional argument, let's focus on the children, not on the administrators, not on the public employees, not on the government employees. Let's focus on what the children need, which is not more red tape and bureaucrats sitting back there typing on desktops.
Yeah, Andy, I make a promise too that I won't call in multiple times on your show so that I can, so you can have other people can have opportunities to call in.
Oh, I appreciate
Thanks
that,
for all
Ron.
you do.
Hey, I appreciate that, Ron, very much. Yeah, we do usually have the standing rule of usually about one phone call a day, and we've had a few that call multiple times, but let's try and keep it to about one phone call a day. So that way we got a lot of callers that like to get in, and our lines are always jammed usually when it comes to a hot issue. So let's try and keep it to about one phone call a day, and that way we can allow as many people on the show as we possibly can. And but we love all the phone calls, very much so. The discussion, the dialogue on both sides of the aisle, by the way. I know we have some that call in trying to argue and debate with me, and I love that because I love the dialogue. I love understanding the other side, and hopefully by the end of it, even though you may not disagree, you at least understand my side of it as well. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is how we actually move forward with a positive society. 7 minutes at the top of the hour. Take one more break, wrapping up the show today. This is The Voice of Reason. Join me tomorrow. I'll be broadcasting live from Topeka. If you're able to make it up there, please do so. The Second Amendment rally happening on the Capitol steps tomorrow morning, 10 a.m., directly after the show. I'll be broadcasting the entire show live from Topeka tomorrow morning, and then I'll be I have the honor and the great privilege to be able to host and MC the rally going on at 10 o'clock for the Second Amendment rally, brought to you by and presented by the Kansas State Rifle Association and the NRA. Along with that, directly afterwards, I'll be heading up to Lenexa, broadcasting up there, giving you the reports from the Kansas State Rifle Association's annual meeting. Vendors, exhibitors, candidates for different seats across the entire state. We'll be talking with them. We'll have updates on the KQAM airwaves, along with Facebook.com/1480KQAM. We'll do some Facebook Live feeds. We'll do some stuff on there, so stay tuned. Get all the updates. And again, thanks to all of our sponsors for allowing us to do this and make it all happen. Rob's Gun Tech and Firearms, MJ's Truck Repair and Moundridge, Phil's Coins, Augusta Flight Center, JD Aviation, Jimmy's Egg, and AutoSmart, and of course the Kansas State Rifle Association. Thanks to all you guys allowing us to go up there, cover it all. It's going to be 2 days of extravaganza fun, and you're not going to want to miss it. A way that we can protect the Second Amendment, which, by the way, the show tomorrow being in Topeka, right there at the Capitol as we're doing it, is going to be mostly about the Second Amendment and about guns. Travis Couture, Lovelady, who is the NRA liaison for our region of the nation, he's going to be guest hosting the show with me tomorrow, and then we'll have just about all the guests that are going to be speaking at the rally coming on and jumping on the show for a few minutes to talk as well about what they do and the importance of this rally. So if you get a chance, go up to Topeka 10 o'clock tomorrow. It's going to be a lot of fun. We'll be up there live. No Facebook Live tomorrow, no TV tomorrow, because we'll be up there. So stay tuned into the radio, your exclusive coverage for that. It's going to be a blast. This is your show. As always, it's time to speak up, speak out, speak loud, speak proud, speak the truth, and always speak some reason, baby. This is The Voice of Reason. Have a great Thursday.